Kate Morrison stared at her computer screen in disbelief. The email notification that had just arrived made her stomach drop. Someone had accessed her private medical records without authorization, and somehow, details about her recent cancer diagnosis had been leaked to her insurance company. The worst part was that she hadn't even told her own family yet. The 34-year-old marketing director had always been careful about her privacy. Working for a mid-sized tech company in Denver, she understood the importance of data security better than most. But now, her most personal information was floating around in the wrong hands, and she had no idea how it happened. Kate's hands trembled as she reached for her coffee mug. The diagnosis itself had been shocking enough. Just 2 weeks ago, Dr. Martinez had delivered the news that the lump in her breast was malignant, stage 2 breast cancer, treatable but requiring immediate action. She had scheduled surgery for the following month and planned to tell her family over the weekend. Now her insurance company knew before her own mother did. The notification email was formal and cold. It informed her that her health insurance provider had received updated medical information and that her premium rates might be affected. Kate knew this was illegal under HIPAA laws, but the damage was already done. Someone at Mountain View Medical Center had violated her trust. She picked up her phone and dialed the medical center's privacy office. After being transferred 3 times, she finally reached Janet Walsh, the facility's privacy officer. "Ms. Morrison, I understand your concern," Janet said in a practiced tone. "We take patient privacy very seriously here at Mountain View. I can assure you we're investigating this matter thoroughly."
Investigating? Kate's voice rose.
"My private cancer diagnosis is already out there. What exactly are you investigating? Who had access to my files?" Janet cleared her throat. "I can't discuss the details of our internal investigation, but I can tell you that only authorized personnel have access to patient records. There are strict protocols in place." Kate felt her frustration building. "Then how did my insurance company get information I haven't even shared with my family? Someone in your facility leaked my medical data, and I want to know who." "Miss Morrison, I understand you're upset, but making accusations won't help the situation. We have security measures that track all access to patient files. If there was unauthorized access, we'll find it." After hanging up, Kate felt more determined than ever to get answers. She couldn't just sit back and wait for the medical center to investigate themselves. She needed to take action. That evening, Kate drove to her best friend Sarah's house. Sarah worked as a cybersecurity consultant and had helped several clients deal with data breaches. If anyone could help her figure out how to investigate this, it would be Sarah. "This is serious, Kate," Sarah said after hearing the full story. "Medical data breaches can destroy lives. Not only is it a HIPAA violation, but it could affect your employment, your ability to get life insurance, everything." Kate nodded grimly. "That's exactly why I need to find out who did this. The medical center isn't going to give me real answers. They're more concerned about protecting themselves than protecting me." Sarah leaned forward in her chair. "You know, most medical facilities have pretty basic security systems. If someone really wanted to dig into this, they might be able to find out more than the official investigation would reveal." "What are you suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting anything illegal," Sarah said carefully. "But you have every right to understand how your private information was compromised. Sometimes that means doing your own research." Kate spent the next few days learning everything she could about Mountain View Medical Center's staff and operations. She discovered that the facility employed over 300 people, from doctors and nurses to administrative staff and IT personnel. Any one of them could potentially have access to patient records. She also learned that the medical center had experienced budget cuts recently. Several staff members had been laid off, and there was general unrest among the remaining employees. Kate wondered if someone with access to patient data might be desperate enough to sell information to insurance companies or other interested parties. The more she researched, the more she realized that her case probably wasn't isolated. Medical data was valuable on the black market, and unscrupulous insurance companies were always looking for ways to deny coverage or raise premiums based on undisclosed health conditions. Kate decided she needed to get inside the medical center to investigate properly. As a patient, she had legitimate reasons to be there, and she could use those visits to observe the staff and their security procedures. She scheduled a follow-up appointment with Dr. Martinez and arrived early to scope out the facility. The security was surprisingly lax. Employees badged in through main entrances, but there were several side doors that seemed to rely only on simple keypad locks. The reception area bustled with activity, and patient files were visible on computer screens throughout the workspace. During her appointment, Kate paid careful attention to how staff handled her information. She noticed that nurses and technicians logged into computer systems using shared passwords that seemed to be common knowledge among the staff. When one nurse stepped away from her workstation, her computer remained unlocked with patient records visible on the screen. "Dr. Martinez," Kate said during their consultation, "I'm concerned about the security of my medical information. I received a notice that my insurance company had accessed details about my diagnosis before I even told my family." Dr. Martinez frowned. "That shouldn't have happened. We have strict protocols about patient confidentiality. I'll make sure to mention this to our privacy office. I already spoke with them. They said they're investigating, but I haven't heard anything back. Is there anyone else I should talk to? You might try speaking with our IT department. They can track access to electronic records. Ask for Mike Chen in IT security. He's usually pretty helpful with these kinds of issues." Kate made a mental note of the name. After her appointment, she stopped by the IT department, which was located in the basement of the medical building. The area was less secure than she expected, with several unmarked doors and minimal surveillance. Mike Chen turned out to be a young, overworked technician who seemed genuinely concerned about Kate's situation. "I can run a report on access to your files," he offered. "It'll show everyone who viewed your records and when." The report Mike generated was enlightening. Kate's medical files had been accessed 23 times in the past month by various staff members. Most of the access was legitimate: doctors, nurses, and lab technicians who were involved in her care. But there were 3 entries that stood out. Someone with the user ID admin_TM had accessed her files at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night, just 2 days after her diagnosis. The access had lasted for 47 minutes, which seemed excessive for a routine check. The same user ID had accessed the files of dozens of other patients that same night. "Who is admin_temp?" Kate asked. Mike looked uncomfortable. "That's a temporary administrative account. It's supposed to be used only for system maintenance and emergency access. Someone would need special authorization to use it." "Who would have that authorization? The IT director, the privacy officer, and maybe 1 or 2 senior administrators. But using it to access patient files at night, that doesn't seem right." Kate felt a chill run down her spine. Someone with high-level access had been systematically reviewing patient files in the middle of the night. This wasn't a random breach or a mistake. It was deliberate. "Mike, is there any way to find out who was using that account?" "Not easily. Temporary accounts don't always log the actual user." But he hesitated. "There might be other ways to figure it out. Security camera footage, badge access logs, that kind of thing." Kate realized she needed to dig deeper. If someone at the medical center was systematically stealing patient data, her case was just the tip of the iceberg. She needed to find out who was behind the admin_temp account and what they were doing with the stolen information. That night, Kate couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the late-night access to her files and wondering how many other patients had been affected. She decided that she couldn't wait for official channels to resolve this. She needed to conduct her own investigation. The next morning, Kate called in sick to work and drove back to Mountain View Medical Center. She had a plan, but it would require careful timing and a bit of luck. She needed to be in the building late at night when whoever was using the admin_temp account might be active. Kate spent the day observing the building's security patterns. She noted when guards made their rounds, which entrances were monitored, and how staff accessed the building after hours. The medical center operated 24/7, but most administrative areas were empty after 10 p.m., except for essential personnel. She also researched the senior staff members who would have access to administrative accounts. Janet Walsh, the privacy officer, had been with the medical center for 8 years and seemed to have a clean record. Patricia Huang, the IT director, was newer to the organization but had excellent credentials. There were also several department heads who might have administrative privileges. As Kate dug deeper into the medical center's staff directory, she discovered something interesting. Janet Walsh's assistant, Monica Rivera had recently been promoted from a temporary position to a permanent role. According to the staff newsletter, Monica often worked late to catch up on administrative tasks. Kate decided that Monica might be worth investigating. As an assistant to the privacy officer, Monica would have knowledge of the medical center's security procedures and possibly access to administrative accounts. Her recent promotion might also indicate that she had been given new responsibilities and access privileges. That evening, Kate returned to the medical center around 10 p.m., using a legitimate reason for being there. She claimed she had left her purse in the waiting area after her appointment. The security guard at the front desk was friendly and helpful, walking with her to the main waiting area. "Take your time, miss," the guard said. "I'll be making my rounds, but just stop by the desk when you're ready to leave." Kate pretended to search for her purse while actually observing the security procedures. The guard's rounds took him away from the front desk for about 15 minutes every hour. During those times, the main entrance was unmonitored, though it was still locked and required a badge for access. She also noticed that several staff members were still in the building, working in various departments. The IT department seemed particularly active, with lights on and people moving around. Kate realized that conducting surveillance would be more challenging than she had anticipated. After retrieving her lost purse from her car and returning to find it in the waiting area, Kate left the medical center but didn't go home. Instead, she parked across the street in a 24-hour diner's parking lot where she could observe the medical building. From her vantage point, Kate could see several entrances and windows. She noticed that the IT department on the ground floor had large windows facing the parking area, and she could see people working inside even late into the evening. Around 11:30 p.m., Kate saw something that made her heart race. A woman she recognized as Monica Rivera was entering the building through a side entrance, using a key card to bypass the main security desk. Monica was supposed to be an administrative assistant, but she was arriving at the medical center well after normal business hours. Kate watched as lights turned on in the administrative wing where the privacy office was located. She realized that this might be her chance to find out what was happening with the Edmund_temp account. If Monica was the one accessing patient files illegally, Kate might be able to catch her in the act. The problem was that Kate had no legitimate reason to be in the building at midnight, and she couldn't exactly walk up to the front desk and ask to investigate potential data theft. She needed a different approach. Kate remembered that Sarah had mentioned security vulnerabilities in older buildings. Many medical facilities had outdated access control systems that relied on simple magnetic locks and keypad codes. If Kate could find a way to get inside the building without triggering alarms, she might be able to gather evidence of what Monica was doing. She drove around the building looking for alternative entrances. The medical center was housed in a converted office building that had been renovated several times. There were multiple entrances, some of which appeared to be for emergency use only. On the backside of the building, Kate found a service entrance that seemed to be used for deliveries and maintenance. The door had a simple electronic lock, but she noticed that the frame was slightly warped, probably from years of heavy use. When she tested it gently, she could see that the lock wasn't fully engaging. Kate realized she was about to cross a line. Breaking into a medical facility, even to investigate a potential crime, was illegal. But she also knew that if she didn't act, the person responsible for stealing her medical data might never be caught. She thought about her cancer diagnosis and how violated she felt knowing that her private information had been compromised. She thought about other patients who might be affected, and how insurance companies could use stolen medical data to deny coverage to people who needed it most. Taking a deep breath, Kate decided to proceed. She carefully pushed on the service door and it opened with a soft click. The hallway inside was dimly lit and appeared to lead to the basement level where maintenance and storage areas were located. Kate used her phone's flashlight to navigate the unfamiliar corridor. She found a stairwell that led to the main floor, emerging near the IT department. The building was eerily quiet, except for the hum of computer equipment and the distant sound of someone typing. As Kate crept through the hallways toward the administrative wing, she felt her heart pounding. She had never done anything like this before, but she was determined to find out who had violated her privacy and why. The administrative area was darker than the rest of the building, but Kate could see a light coming from the privacy office at the end of the hall. She moved carefully toward the light, staying close to the wall and listening for any sounds that might indicate security guards or other staff members. When she reached the privacy office, Kate could see Monica Rivera sitting at a computer workstation, intently focused on the screen. From her position in the hallway, Kate could see that Monica was accessing what appeared to be patient records, scrolling through file after file with practiced efficiency. Kate realized she needed to get closer to see exactly what Monica was doing, but the office was small and there was nowhere to hide. She also needed to document what she was seeing if she wanted to have evidence of the illegal access. Carefully, Kate moved to a position where she could see the computer screen more clearly. Monica was indeed accessing patient files, but she wasn't just viewing them randomly. She appeared to be searching for specific types of information: insurance details, pre-existing conditions, and treatment plans for expensive procedures. As Kate watched, Monica opened her own laptop and began copying information from the medical center's system. She was systematically stealing patient data, and based on the organized way she was working, this was clearly not her first time. Kate tried to use her phone to record what she was seeing, but the hallway was too dark and the angle wasn't good enough to capture clear evidence. She realized she needed to get inside the office somehow, but that would mean confronting Monica directly. Before Kate could decide on her next move, she heard footsteps echoing from another part of the building. Someone else was in the medical center, and they were heading in her direction. Kate quickly looked around for somewhere to hide. There was a supply closet across the hall from the privacy office. Kate tried the handle and found it unlocked. She slipped inside just as the footsteps grew louder. Through the crack in the door, she could see a security guard walking down the hallway with a flashlight. The guard stopped at the privacy office and knocked on the doorframe. "Working late again, Monica?" he said in a friendly tone. "Just catching up on some administrative tasks," Monica replied without looking away from her computer screen. "You know how it is with all the new compliance requirements." "Sure thing. Just remember to lock up when you leave. We've had some concerns about security lately." Kate's heart raced as she realized the security guard was treating Monica's late-night presence as normal. This suggested that Monica had been doing this for some time and had established a pattern that wouldn't raise suspicions. After the guard left, Kate waited several minutes before emerging from the supply closet. She needed to act quickly before Monica finished her work and left for the night. Kate had come too far to leave without concrete evidence of what was happening. Taking a deep breath, Kate stepped into the doorway of the privacy office. "Working late, Monica?" Monica spun around in her chair, her face showing shock and fear. "What are you doing here? How did you get in?" "I think the better question is, what are you doing with patient medical records at midnight?" Kate said, trying to keep her voice steady despite her nervousness. Monica quickly closed the laptop and tried to minimize the windows on the medical center's computer. "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just doing administrative work. Administrative work that involves copying patient files to your personal computer? I saw what you were doing, Monica. You're stealing medical data." Monica's expression shifted from fear to calculation. "You're trespassing. I should call security right now." "Go ahead," Kate said with more confidence than she felt. "I'm sure they'd be very interested to know why you're using the admin_TEM account to access patient files and copy them to your personal laptop." The mention of the admin_TEM account made Monica's face go pale. "You don't understand what you're talking about." "I understand perfectly. You've been stealing patient data and selling it to insurance companies. My cancer diagnosis was leaked before I even told my family. How many other patients have you violated?" Monica stood up from her chair, and Kate could see that she was weighing her options. "Look, you don't know the whole story. This isn't what it looks like. Then explain it to me." Monica glanced toward the door, as if considering whether she could leave. "I can't. There's too much at stake." Kate realized that Monica's nervousness suggested this might be bigger than just one rogue employee stealing data. "Who are you working with, Monica? Who's paying you for this information?" Before Monica could answer, Kate heard footsteps in the hallway again. This time, they were moving quickly and purposefully toward the privacy office. Kate realized that Monica might have sent some kind of alert, or that security cameras had detected Kate's presence in the building. "You need to leave right now," Monica whispered urgently. "You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into." The footsteps were getting closer, and Kate could hear voices. Multiple people were approaching the office, and they didn't sound like security guards making routine rounds. Kate looked around the small office for another way out, but there was only one door. She was trapped, and whoever was coming down the hall would find her investigating Monica's illegal activities. "There's a back stairwell," Monica said quickly. "Go out the window and down the fire escape." "But Kate, forget what you saw here. For your own safety, just forget about all of this." The window in the privacy office was small, but Kate managed to open it and climb through onto the fire escape just as she heard voices at the office door. As she made her way down the metal stairs, she could hear a conversation starting inside the office, but couldn't make out the specific words. Kate's hands were shaking as she reached the ground level and made her way back to her car. She had gotten more than she bargained for, and Monica's warning about forgetting what she had seen suggested that this medical data theft operation was much larger and more dangerous than Kate had realized. As she drove home, Kate's mind raced with questions. Who else was involved in the data theft? Why had Monica warned her to forget about it? And most importantly, what was Kate going to do with the knowledge that someone at Mountain View Medical Center was systematically stealing patient information? Kate knew she couldn't just pretend this hadn't happened. Her privacy had been violated, and other patients were at risk. But she also realized that she might be in over her head. If Monica's warning was genuine, then exposing this operation could put Kate in danger. By the time Kate reached her apartment, she had made a decision. She was going to document everything she had learned and continue her investigation, but she was going to be much more careful about how she proceeded. This was clearly bigger than one assistant stealing data for extra money. Kate spent the rest of the night writing down everything she remembered from her surveillance of Monica. She documented the times, the computer systems Monica had accessed, and the conversation they had in the office. She also made copies of all the information Mike Chen had provided about the admin_temp account access. As the sun came up, Kate realized that her midnight investigation had only revealed the tip of the iceberg. Someone at Mountain View Medical Center was running a sophisticated operation to steal and sell patient data, and Kate had just become a threat to that operation. She also realized that she couldn't handle this alone. She needed help from someone with more experience in investigations and security. The question was who she could trust and how she could proceed without putting herself in more danger. Kate looked at her phone and considered calling the police, but she wasn't sure they would take her seriously based on what she had seen during an illegal break-in. She also considered contacting a lawyer or a journalist, but she wasn't sure who to trust with such sensitive information. One thing was clear. Kate's fight for her privacy had become something much larger. She had uncovered what appeared to be a systematic violation of patient rights, and she was the only one who knew about it. The question was what she was going to do next. Kate Morrison barely slept that night. Every sound in her apartment building made her jump, and she kept replaying Monica's warning in her head. For your own safety, just forget about all of this. The words carried a weight that made Kate realize she might have stumbled into something far more dangerous than a simple privacy violation. The next morning, Kate called in sick to work again. She couldn't concentrate on marketing reports and client presentations when she had uncovered what appeared to be a systematic theft of medical data. She needed to figure out her next steps carefully. Kate's first instinct was to call Sarah, but she hesitated. If this situation was as dangerous as Monica had implied, Kate didn't want to put her best friend at risk. Instead, she decided to do more research on her own before involving anyone else. Kate spent the morning searching online for similar cases of medical data theft. What she found was disturbing. Medical records were incredibly valuable on the black market, sometimes selling for hundreds of dollars per file. Insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, and even identity thieves were willing to pay high prices for detailed health information. She also discovered that medical data breaches were often inside jobs. Healthcare facilities employed hundreds of people with varying levels of access to patient information, and it was relatively easy for someone with legitimate access to abuse their privileges. What worried Kate most was learning that people who exposed medical data theft operations sometimes faced retaliation. She found news stories about whistleblowers who had lost their jobs, faced lawsuits, or even received threats. In one case, a nurse who reported illegal access to patient files had her own medical information leaked as revenge. Kate realized she needed to be smarter about her approach. She couldn't just march into the police station or call the medical center's administration without more concrete evidence. She also needed to protect herself from potential retaliation. Around noon, Kate's phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number, which made her heart race. She had been paranoid all morning about Monica or whoever Monica was working with trying to contact her. "Hello?" Kate answered cautiously. "Is this Kate Morrison?" The voice was male, middle-aged, and unfamiliar. "Who is this?" "My name is Detective Ray Collins with the Denver Police Department, Healthcare Fraud Unit. I understand you may have information about irregularities at Mountain View Medical Center." Kate's mind raced. How did the police know about her investigation? Had someone reported her for breaking into the medical center? Or had Monica reported the encounter to protect herself? "I'm not sure what you mean," Kate said carefully. "Miss Morrison, you don't need to be concerned. We've been investigating potential HIPAA violations at several medical facilities in the area, and your name came up in connection with Mountain View. We'd like to speak with you about what you might know." Kate felt a mixture of relief and suspicion. On one hand, it seemed like law enforcement was already aware of the data theft problem. On the other hand, she wasn't sure if she could trust that this person was actually a police detective. "Can you prove you're really with the police?" Kate asked. "Of course. I can meet you at the police station, or I can provide you with my badge number and department contact information, so you can verify my identity. We want to make this as comfortable as possible for you." Kate decided to verify Detective Collins' identity before agreeing to meet. She called the Denver Police Department's main number and asked to be transferred to the Healthcare Fraud Unit. After being transferred twice, she was connected to someone who confirmed that Detective Ray Collins was indeed a member of their team. They agreed to meet at a coffee shop near Kate's apartment that afternoon. Kate arrived early and chose a table where she could see the entrance and had an easy exit route. She was still nervous about the whole situation and wanted to be cautious. Detective Collins turned out to be a tired-looking man in his 50s, with graying hair and a rumpled suit. He showed Kate his badge and department ID before sitting down. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me, Ms. Morrison. I know this situation must be stressful for you." "How did you know I was involved in this?" Kate asked. "We've been monitoring unusual activity at several medical facilities, including Mountain View. Your name appeared in access logs that we obtained through a warrant, and we noticed some irregularities in how your medical information was handled." Kate felt a mixture of validation and concern. "So, you know about the data theft?" "We know that there have been unauthorized accesses to patient records, but we're still trying to understand the scope of the problem and who's involved. We were hoping you could help us fill in some gaps." Detective Collins explained that the Healthcare Fraud Unit had been investigating suspicious patterns in medical data breaches across the Denver area. They had noticed that certain types of patient information were being leaked to insurance companies and other entities in ways that suggested organized theft rather than random breaches. "The problem is that these operations are sophisticated," Collins said. "The people involved know how to cover their tracks, and they often have legitimate access to the systems they're abusing. It's difficult to prove criminal intent without catching them in the act." Kate realized this was her opportunity to share what she had discovered, but she was still worried about admitting to breaking into the medical center. What if someone had information about these activities but obtained it in a way that might not have been completely legal? Detective Collins smiled slightly. "Ms. Morrison, we're not interested in prosecuting victims of medical privacy violations for trying to protect themselves. We're interested in stopping the people who are systematically stealing patient data. If you have information that could help us, we want to hear it." Kate took a deep breath and told Detective Collins everything. She described discovering the unauthorized access to her files, her conversation with Mike Chen in IT, and her surveillance of Monica Rivera. She admitted to entering the medical center after hours and witnessing Monica copying patient files to her personal laptop. Detective Collins listened carefully, taking notes and asking clarifying questions. When Kate finished her story, he was quiet for a moment. "Miss Morrison, what you've described is very helpful, but it also confirms our suspicion that this is a larger operation than just one person stealing data. Monica Rivera is likely a small part of a bigger network." "What do you mean?" "Think about it. Monica is an administrative assistant. She doesn't have the technical knowledge to set up the admin_TEM account or the connections to sell stolen data to insurance companies. Someone else is organizing this operation, and Monica is just one of the people carrying it out. Detective Collins explained that medical data theft operations often worked like other organized crime networks. There would be people inside healthcare facilities who had access to the data, technical experts who knew how to extract and transfer the information, and buyers who were willing to pay for specific types of medical records. The fact that Monica warned you to forget what you saw suggests that she's scared of whoever she's working for. That tells us this operation has some serious people behind it. Kate felt a chill. Am I in danger? We don't think so, as long as you're careful. These operations typically try to stay under the radar. They don't want to attract attention by threatening or harming patients. But you should be aware of your surroundings and report anything unusual. Detective Collins asked Kate if she would be willing to help with the investigation. The police needed more evidence before they could make arrests, and Kate's insider knowledge of the situation could be valuable. What would that involve? Kate asked. Nothing dangerous. We might ask you to make some phone calls or schedule appointments to help us gather information. We're also working on getting additional warrants to monitor the medical center's computer systems more closely. Kate agreed to help, but she insisted on some conditions. She wanted regular updates on the investigation's progress, and she wanted assurance that her cooperation would be kept confidential until the case was resolved. That evening, Kate finally called Sarah to update her on what had happened. Sarah was shocked by the story, but also concerned about Kate's safety. You broke into a medical center and confronted someone who's part of a criminal operation? Sarah said. Kate, that was incredibly dangerous. What if something had happened to you? I know it was risky, but I had to find out what was going on. My medical information was stolen, and I couldn't just sit back and wait for someone else to investigate. Sarah's cybersecurity expertise made her valuable in understanding the technical aspects of what Kate had discovered. The fact that they're using temporary administrative accounts shows they know what they're doing, Sarah explained. Most people wouldn't know how to cover their tracks that well. Detective Collins said the same thing. He thinks Monica is just a small part of a larger operation. That makes sense. Medical data theft at this scale would require multiple people with different skills. You need someone with legitimate access to get the data, someone with technical knowledge to extract it safely, and someone with business connections to sell it. Sarah suggested that Kate should be very careful about her own digital security while she was helping with the investigation. If these people are sophisticated enough to run a data theft operation, they might also be monitoring communications or trying to gather information about people who threaten their business. Kate spent the next few days being more cautious than usual. She varied her daily routines, avoided using her regular email account for sensitive communications, and paid attention to whether anyone seemed to be following her. Detective Collins contacted her again on Friday with an update. The police had obtained additional warrants and were monitoring computer access at Mountain View Medical Center more closely. They had confirmed that the admin_temp account was being used regularly to access patient files, usually during late evening or early morning hours when fewer staff members were in the building. We've also been looking into Monica Rivera's background, Detective Collins said. She has significant financial problems. She defaulted on her student loans last year and has credit card debt that's larger than her annual salary. That gives her a strong motive to participate in something like this for extra money. The police had also discovered that Monica wasn't the only employee at Mountain View with financial problems. Several other staff members with access to patient records were experiencing economic difficulties that might make them vulnerable to recruitment by data theft operations. We think someone is specifically targeting employees who are desperate for money, Collins explained. It's a common tactic in organized crime. Find people who are vulnerable and offer them what seems like easy money for small favors. Kate asked whether the police had identified who might be organizing the operation. Collins said they were still working on that aspect of the investigation, but they had some leads. One thing we've noticed is that the stolen data seems to be going to specific buyers who are particularly interested in cancer patients, people with chronic diseases, and patients requiring expensive treatments. That suggests someone is fulfilling targeted orders rather than just selling random medical records. This information made Kate feel even more violated. Not only had her cancer diagnosis been stolen, but it had probably been specifically targeted because of the type of information it contained. The following Monday, Detective Collins asked Kate to help with a specific aspect of the investigation. The police wanted to set up surveillance at Mountain View Medical Center to catch the data thieves in action, but they needed someone with legitimate reasons to be in the building to help them understand the facility's layout and security procedures. "We'd like you to schedule some routine appointments over the next couple of weeks," Collins said. "Nothing unusual, just regular follow-ups related to your treatment. While you're there, we want you to observe the security procedures and note anything that seems different from what you saw during your late-night visit." Kate agreed to help, but she was nervous about returning to the medical center. She was worried that Monica or someone else might recognize her and realize she was working with the police. Her first appointment was with Dr. Martinez on Wednesday morning. Kate arrived early and spent time in the waiting area, observing the staff and their procedures. She noticed that computer security seemed slightly tighter than before. Staff members were logging out of their workstations more consistently, and there were signs posted about protecting patient information. During her appointment, Kate mentioned her concerns about medical data security to Dr. Martinez. "Doctor, I'm still worried about my privacy. Has the medical center made any changes to improve data security?" "Doctor," Martinez looked uncomfortable. "There have been some policy updates recently. The administration has been more focused on making sure we follow all the privacy protocols. Have there been other patients with concerns about data breaches?" "I can't discuss other patients, but I can tell you that privacy and security are top priorities for the medical center. If you have specific concerns, you should definitely speak with our privacy office." Kate noticed that Dr. Martinez seemed more guarded than usual, which made her wonder if the medical center's administration was aware that they were under investigation. After her appointment, Kate walked through different areas of the medical center to observe the general atmosphere. Staff members seemed more tense than during her previous visits, and there were more reminders about data security posted throughout the facility. Kate also noticed that Monica Rivera was not at her usual workstation in the privacy office. When Kate walked past the office, a different person was sitting at Monica's desk. That afternoon, Kate called Detective Collins to report what she had observed. Collins was particularly interested in Monica's absence. "We've been monitoring her activities, and she hasn't been to work for the past 3 days, Collins said. "She called in sick, but we think she might be getting nervous about the investigation." "Does that mean she knows you're watching her?" "Possibly. Or someone else in the operation might have warned her to lay low. Either way, we need to move quickly before the whole network disappears." Detective Collins explained that the police were planning to execute search warrants at several locations, including Monica's home and the medical center's IT department. They wanted to gather evidence before the data thieves had a chance to destroy it. "We're also going to arrest Monica and try to get her to cooperate with the investigation. If she's as scared as you think she is, she might be willing to provide information about who else is involved." The search warrants were executed on Friday morning. Kate wasn't directly involved, but Detective Collins called her that afternoon with an update. "We found Monica's laptop with hundreds of patient files stored on it," Collins said. "We also found evidence of communications with buyers who were paying her for specific types of medical information." The police had arrested Monica at her apartment. According to Collins, she was terrified and immediately asked for a lawyer. However, the evidence they had gathered from her laptop and communications was extensive. "The interesting thing is that Monica was just one part of a network that includes people at several different medical facilities," Collins explained. "This isn't just about Mountain View Medical Center. Someone has been recruiting employees at multiple hospitals and clinics throughout the Denver area." Kate felt a mixture of relief and concern. She was glad that the data theft operation was being exposed, but she was worried about how large the network might be and whether everyone involved would be caught. "What happens next?" Kate asked. "We're going to continue investigating the network and trying to identify all the people involved. We'll also be working with the medical facilities to improve their security procedures. As for you, we'll need you to testify if this goes to trial, but that might not be for several months." Kate realized that her decision to investigate the theft of her medical data had led to uncovering a much larger criminal operation. She felt proud that she had taken action to protect herself and other patients, But she also felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she had discovered. Over the weekend, Kate tried to process everything that had happened. In just 2 weeks, she had gone from discovering that her cancer diagnosis had been leaked to helping police uncover a multi-facility data theft network. She also realized that her own medical treatment had been overshadowed by the investigation. She had been so focused on finding out who had stolen her information that she had barely thought about her upcoming surgery and treatment plan. Kate decided it was time to focus on her health again. She had done what she could to help with the investigation, and now she needed to take care of herself. She scheduled additional appointments with her oncologist and began preparing for her surgery. But even as she tried to return to normal life, Kate couldn't shake the feeling that the investigation was far from over. Detective Collins had mentioned that the data theft network included people at multiple medical facilities, which meant there were probably other victims who didn't even know their information had been stolen. Kate also wondered about the buyers who were purchasing stolen medical data. Who were they, and what were they doing with the information? Were insurance companies involved, or were there other entities with interest in patient medical records? On Sunday evening, Kate received a phone call that answered some of her questions. Detective Collins called with news that would change her understanding of the entire situation. "Kate, we've made some significant progress in the investigation, but we've also discovered something that I think you need to know about." "What is it?" "The data theft network is larger and more sophisticated than we initially thought. We've identified at least 12 different medical facilities where employees were stealing patient data. But more importantly, we've figured out who's been organizing the operation." Kate felt her heart racing. "Who is it?" "It's someone you've had contact with during this investigation. Someone who's been in a position to monitor your activities and possibly influence the direction of our investigation." Collins paused, and Kate could hear papers rustling in the background. "Kate, I need you to be very careful about who you trust and who you share information with. The person organizing this operation has been closer to the investigation than we realized." Kate felt a chill run down her spine. If someone involved in organizing the data theft had been monitoring the investigation, that meant they knew about Kate's cooperation with the police. It also meant that everything Kate thought she knew about the situation might be wrong. "Detective, who is it? Who's been organizing the data theft?" "We're still gathering evidence, but Kate, I need you to promise me that you won't take any more risks. Don't try to investigate on your own. And don't trust anyone with information about this case unless I specifically tell you it's safe." Kate promised to be careful, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was still in danger. If the person organizing the data theft operation knew about her involvement in the investigation, they might see her as a threat that needed to be eliminated. As Kate hung up the phone, she realized that her fight for privacy and justice was far from over. In fact, it might be just beginning. Kate Morrison spent a sleepless night wondering who Detective Collins was talking about. Someone close to the investigation was organizing the data theft network, but Collins hadn't revealed the person's identity. Kate ran through everyone she had encountered during her investigation: Mike Chen from IT, Janet Walsh, the privacy officer, Dr. Tel Blue, Martinez, even Sarah. The thought that someone she trusted might be involved made her feel sick. The next morning, Kate decided she couldn't wait for Detective Collins to contact her again. She needed answers, and she needed them now. But his warning about not trusting anyone made her hesitant to reach out to people she had previously considered allies. Instead, Kate decided to do her own research into the backgrounds of everyone she had encountered at Mountain View Medical Center. If someone in a position of authority was organizing the data theft, there might be clues in their professional history or financial situation. Kate started with Janet Walsh, the privacy officer. Online records showed that Janet had been with Mountain View for 8 years and had previously worked at 2 other medical facilities. Kate searched for news articles about those facilities and found something interesting. One of Janet's previous employers had experienced a significant data breach 3 years ago that was never fully explained. The breach had affected over 2,000 patients, and the investigation had concluded that it was caused by insider access with unknown motives. The timing coincided with Janet's departure from that facility and her hiring at Mountain View. Kate also discovered that Janet owned a house worth significantly more than her salary would typically support. Property records showed she had purchased the home 2 years ago for $750,000, which seemed expensive for someone in her position. Next, Kate researched Mike Chen, the IT technician who had been so helpful in providing information about the admin_temp account. Mike's background seemed clean. He was young, recently graduated, and appeared to be legitimately concerned about data security. However, Kate noticed that he had access to all the systems that would be necessary to create and manage temporary administrative accounts. Dr. Martinez also seemed to have a clean background, but Kate realized that doctors would have access to patient information across multiple systems and facilities. If someone wanted to organize a large-scale data theft operation, having a physician involved would provide credibility and access. As Kate was researching online, her phone rang. The caller ID showed Detective Collins' number. "Kate, I need to meet with you right away. Can you come to the police station? Has something happened? We've had some significant developments in the case. I'd rather discuss them in person." Kate drove to the police station with her mind racing. When she arrived, Detective Collins looked more tired than usual, and he seemed tense. "Kate, we've identified the person who's been organizing the data theft network, and the situation is more complicated than we initially thought. Who is it?" "It's Janet Walsh, the privacy officer at Mountain View Medical Center." Kate felt a mixture of validation and shock. Her research had pointed to Janet as a possible suspect, but she hadn't expected her suspicions to be confirmed so quickly. "How did you figure it out?" Detective Collins explained that the police had been monitoring communications between the various medical facilities where data theft was occurring. They had discovered that someone was coordinating the activities across multiple locations and providing training to employees like Monica Rivera. "We traced the communications back to Janet Walsh. She's been using her position as a privacy officer to identify vulnerable employees at different medical facilities and recruit them into the data theft network." The irony was staggering. The person responsible for protecting patient privacy at Mountain View Medical Center was actually the one orchestrating its violation on a massive scale. "Janet has access to privacy policies and security procedures at multiple facilities through her professional network," Collins continued. "She knows exactly how to circumvent security measures and train others to do the same." Kate asked about Monica Rivera and her role in the operation. Collins explained that Monica was essentially a low-level employee who had been recruited because of her financial problems and her access to patient records. Janet identified Monica as someone who was desperate for money and had access to the systems she needed. Janet trained Monica to use the admin_TEMI account and taught her how to extract patient data without leaving obvious traces. But I caught Monica in the act. How was that not obvious? Because Janet was monitoring the investigation and knew that we were getting close. She probably told Monica to accelerate her activities, which made Monica sloppy and increased the chances of getting caught. Detective Collins revealed something that made Kate's blood run cold. Janet Walsh had been monitoring Kate's activities from the beginning. "Janet knew about your complaints regarding the data breach because you reported it directly to her office. She knew about your conversation with Mike Chen because she has access to IT security logs. And she probably knew about your late-night visit to the medical center because she monitors security reports." Kate realized that Janet had been watching her throughout the entire investigation. "That means she knows I'm working with you." "Yes, and that's why we need to be very careful about your safety. Janet has proven that she's willing to violate laws and ethics for money. We don't know how far she might go to protect her operation." Collins explained that the police were planning to arrest Janet Walsh, but they wanted to gather more evidence first. They had discovered that Janet's data theft network was much larger than they had initially realized. "We've identified employees at 15 different medical facilities who appear to be working for Janet. The network has been operating for at least 3 years and has stolen data from thousands of patients." The scope of the operation was overwhelming. Kate had thought her case was an isolated incident, but it was actually part of a massive criminal enterprise that had been violating patient privacy across the entire Denver area. "Who was buying the stolen data?" Kate asked. "That's where this gets really disturbing. Janet wasn't just selling to insurance companies. She was also providing data to pharmaceutical companies, medical research firms, and even legal offices that specialize in denying disability claims." Detective Collins explained that Janet had been running what amounted to a data brokerage service. Different buyers were willing to pay for different types of medical information, and Janet's network was sophisticated enough to fulfill specific requests. Cancer patients like yourself were particularly valuable because insurance companies could use that information to deny life insurance policies or increase premiums. Pharmaceutical companies wanted data about patients with rare diseases for research purposes. Legal firms wanted information about people filing disability claims. Kate felt sick thinking about how her private medical information might have been used. Her cancer diagnosis could have been sold to multiple buyers for different purposes, all without her knowledge or consent. How much money was Janet making from this? We're still investigating her finances, but we estimate she was earning hundreds of thousands of dollars per year from the data theft operation. That explains how she could afford her expensive house and lifestyle. Collins told Kate that the police were ready to move forward with arrests, but they wanted Kate to help with one final aspect of the investigation. We want to set up a controlled meeting between you and Janet Walsh. We need her to incriminate herself on record, and we think she might be willing to talk if she believes she can convince you to stop cooperating with our investigation. Kate was terrified by the idea of confronting Janet directly. Isn't that dangerous? We'll have officers nearby, and you'll be wearing a recording device. Janet doesn't know that we've identified her as the organizer of the network, so she might think she can manipulate the situation to her advantage. Collins explained that Janet had requested a meeting with Kate through the medical center's patient services department. Janet claimed she wanted to address Kate's privacy concerns and discuss how the medical center was improving its security procedures. It's the perfect opportunity for us to gather evidence of her involvement in the data theft. Janet will probably try to discourage you from pursuing the investigation further, and she might reveal information about other aspects of the network. Kate agreed to the meeting, but she insisted on extensive safety precautions. Collins assured her that multiple officers would be positioned nearby, and Kate would have a panic button in case the situation became dangerous. The meeting was scheduled for the next day at Mountain View Medical Center. Kate arrived early and met with Detective Collins and his team to go over the plan. Remember, we need Janet to talk about the data theft explicitly. Try to ask questions that will make her reveal details about how the operation works or who else is involved. Kate was fitted with a small recording device that was hidden in her clothing. She also received a panic button that would alert the police if she pressed it. Janet is smart and experienced, Collins warned. She's going to be careful about what she says. You need to be patient and try to get her to relax and open up. Kate walked into the medical center feeling more nervous than she had during her midnight break-in. This time she was walking into a trap, but she was the bait. Janet Walsh was waiting in her office, looking professional and concerned. She greeted Kate warmly and offered her coffee in a comfortable chair. Kate, I want to thank you for agreeing to meet with me. I know you've had concerns about your privacy, and I want to make sure we address them properly. Kate tried to appear nervous but cooperative. I'm still worried about how my medical information was leaked to my insurance company. I need to understand what happened. Janet nodded sympathetically. I completely understand your concern. Medical privacy is something I take very seriously in my role here. We've been conducting a thorough investigation into the incident you reported. What have you found? Well, these situations are often more complex than they initially appear. Sometimes what looks like a data breach is actually the result of legitimate information sharing that patients don't understand. Kate felt a flash of anger at Janet's condescending tone, but she tried to stay calm. My cancer diagnosis was shared with my insurance company before I told my own family. How is that legitimate information sharing? Janet leaned forward in her chair. Kate, I'm going to be honest with you. Sometimes patients think their information has been breached when it actually hasn't been. Insurance companies have access to medical information through legitimate channels that patients aren't always aware of. What legitimate channels? Janet seemed to be choosing her words carefully. There are legal requirements for healthcare providers to share certain information with insurance companies for verification purposes. It's possible that your diagnosis was shared through one of these legitimate processes. Kate realized that Janet was trying to convince her that the data breach hadn't actually occurred, but the timing was suspicious. My insurance company contacted me just 2 days after my diagnosis. That could be a coincidence. Or it could be the result of automated systems that flag certain types of medical information for review. Kate decided to be more direct. I know that someone was accessing patient files late at night using administrative accounts. That doesn't sound like legitimate information sharing. Janet's expression changed slightly. Kate could see that she was becoming more guarded. Kate, I need to ask you something. Have you been discussing your concerns with anyone outside of our medical center? Sometimes patients contact lawyers or advocacy groups that can complicate our investigation. Why would that complicate anything? Because outside parties don't always understand the healthcare industry, and they might encourage patients to pursue legal action based on misunderstandings. That can hurt everyone involved. Kate realized that Janet was trying to find out if she was working with law enforcement. I just want to understand what happened to my medical information. Janet stood up and walked to the window of her office. Kate, let me be completely honest with you. Medical data security is a challenging issue for every healthcare facility. Sometimes breaches occur despite our best efforts, and sometimes information gets shared through channels that patients find concerning. What are you saying? Janet turned back to face Kate. I'm saying that pursuing this investigation might not be in your best interests. Medical privacy violations are difficult to prove, and the legal process can be lengthy and expensive. Sometimes it's better for patients to accept that mistakes happen and focus on their treatment instead. Kate felt her heart racing. Janet was essentially admitting that a breach had occurred while simultaneously trying to discourage Kate from pursuing it further. Are you saying my medical information was actually breached? Janet returned to her seat and looked directly at Kate. I'm saying that in the healthcare industry, information sometimes moves in ways that patients don't expect. The important thing is that your medical care hasn't been affected. Kate decided to push harder. But what about other patients? If my information was compromised, other people might be affected too. Janet's demeanor became more serious. Kate, I need you to understand something. Healthcare facilities like Mountain View employ hundreds of people. If there were widespread concerns about data security, it could seriously damage our reputation and affect our ability to provide care to patients. So you're more concerned about the medical center's reputation than about patient privacy? I'm concerned about finding solutions that work for everyone. Sometimes that means accepting that perfect security isn't possible and focusing on minimizing harm. Kate realized that Janet was essentially admitting that the medical center knew about security problems but was more concerned about protecting their reputation than fixing the issues. What if the security problems are worse than you're telling me? What if someone is deliberately stealing patient information? Janet was quiet for a moment. Kate, hypothetically speaking, if there were deliberate security violations, the people involved would likely be employees who have legitimate access to patient information. Proving deliberate misconduct would be very difficult without catching someone in the act. And if someone were caught in the act? Janet leaned back in her chair. Well, that would create problems for everyone involved. The employee would face criminal charges, the medical center would face regulatory penalties, and patients like yourself would become part of a very public investigation. Kate sensed that Janet was trying to warn her about the consequences of pursuing the investigation. Are you saying I should drop my concerns about the data breach? I'm saying that you should carefully consider whether pursuing this investigation is worth the potential consequences. Legal proceedings can be stressful and invasive, especially for someone dealing with a serious medical diagnosis like cancer. Janet's mention of Kate's cancer diagnosis felt like a subtle threat. Kate realized that Janet was reminding her that she had access to Kate's medical information and could potentially use it against her. What consequences are you referring to? Janet stood up again, signaling that the meeting was coming to an end. Kate, all I'm saying is that sometimes the cure is worse than the disease. You have to focus on your health and your treatment. Everything else is just a distraction. As Kate prepared to leave, Janet made one final comment that made Kate's blood run cold. You know, Kate, medical privacy is a two-way street. Patients expect their information to be protected, but they also need to be careful about who they share their concerns with. Sometimes well-meaning patients get involved with people who don't have their best interests at heart. Kate realized that Janet was warning her about cooperating with law enforcement. Janet might not know for certain that Kate was working with police, but she clearly suspected it. I appreciate your time, Janet. I'll think about what you've said. As Kate left the medical center, she felt like she had just had a conversation with a very dangerous person. Janet Walsh had essentially admitted that data breaches were occurring while simultaneously trying to discourage Kate from pursuing the investigation. Janet had also made subtle threats about the consequences of cooperation with law enforcement. Kate met with Detective Collins immediately after the meeting to discuss what had happened. "She's smart," Collins said after reviewing the recording. "She didn't explicitly admit to anything criminal, but she revealed a lot about her mindset and her knowledge of the situation. Did I get enough evidence? Combined with everything else we have, yes." Janet's comments about the healthcare industry, her knowledge of how data breaches occur, and her attempts to discourage you from pursuing the investigation all support our case against her. Collins told Kate that the police were ready to arrest Janet Walsh and several other members of the data theft network. They had gathered enough evidence to file criminal charges and were confident that they could prove Janet's role as the organizer of the operation. "What happens to me now? You'll need to testify when this goes to trial, but the immediate danger should be over once Janet is arrested. We're also working with the medical center to improve their security procedures so this doesn't happen again." Kate felt a mixture of relief and exhaustion. She had started this journey just wanting to know who had leaked her cancer diagnosis. Now she had helped uncover a massive criminal enterprise that had violated the privacy of thousands of patients. That evening, Detective Collins called Kate with news that the arrests had been successful. "We arrested Janet Walsh at her home this afternoon. We also arrested Monica Rivera and 4 other employees at different medical facilities who were working for Janet's network." How did Janet react? She was shocked that we knew about her role in organizing the operation. I think she believed she had been careful enough to avoid detection. She asked for a lawyer immediately and hasn't said anything else. Collins explained that the investigation was far from over. The police had seized computer equipment and financial records that would help them understand the full scope of the data theft network. "We estimate that Janet's operation affected at least 10,000 patients across multiple medical facilities. The financial damage is probably in the millions of dollars when you consider the value of the stolen data and the harm caused to patients." Kate asked about her own medical information and whether it could be recovered or protected. "Unfortunately, once medical data is stolen and sold, it's very difficult to control where it ends up. We'll try to identify the buyers and recover what we can, but some of your information might still be out there." This news was disappointing, but Kate realized that preventing future thefts was more important than trying to recover data that had already been compromised. "The important thing is that Janet's operation has been shut down," Collins said. "She won't be able to steal data from any more patients, and the medical facilities involved are implementing better security procedures." Kate felt proud of what she had accomplished, but she also felt changed by the experience. She had learned that her privacy could be violated by people she trusted, and that protecting herself required constant vigilance. As Kate prepared for bed that night, she reflected on everything that had happened since she first discovered that her cancer diagnosis had been leaked. She had gone from being a victim of medical data theft to being the key witness in bringing down a major criminal operation. Kate also realized that her cancer treatment, which had been overshadowed by the investigation, was still her top priority. She had successfully protected herself and other patients from future privacy violations, but now she needed to focus on her health and her recovery. The investigation had taught Kate that she was stronger and more resourceful than she had ever imagined. She had taken on a criminal organization and won. Now, she was ready to take on cancer with the same determination and courage. 2 weeks after Janet Walsh's arrest, Kate Morrison finally felt like she could focus on her cancer treatment without the distraction of the data theft investigation. Her surgery was scheduled for the following Monday, and she had spent the weekend preparing herself mentally and emotionally for the procedure. Dr. Martinez had been very supportive throughout the investigation, and Kate was grateful that her medical care hadn't been compromised by the criminal activities at Mountain View Medical Center. If anything, the exposure of the data theft network had led to improved security procedures that made Kate feel more confident about her privacy. On Sunday evening, Kate received an unexpected phone call from Detective Collins. "Kate, I'm sorry to bother you before your surgery, but there's been a significant development in the case that I think you need to know about." Kate felt her stomach drop. She had hoped the investigation was over and she could move on with her life. "What's happened?" Janet Walsh has agreed to cooperate with our investigation in exchange for a reduced sentence. She's provided information about the buyers who were purchasing stolen medical data, and some of what she's revealed is very disturbing. Collins explained that Janet's data theft operation was even more extensive than they had initially realized. She had been selling patient information to multiple types of buyers for different purposes, and some of those purposes were more sinister than simple insurance fraud. One of Janet's biggest customers was a company called MedIntel Analytics. On the surface, they appear to be a legitimate medical research firm, but Janet says they were actually compiling detailed profiles of patients for a much different purpose. What purpose? They were creating databases of patients with specific medical conditions and selling that information to employers, landlords, and other entities that wanted to discriminate against people with health problems. Kate felt sick. Her cancer diagnosis hadn't just been sold to insurance companies, it had potentially been included in databases that could be used to deny her employment, housing, or other opportunities based on her health status. How is that legal? It's not legal, which is why we're expanding our investigation to include MedIntel Analytics and the companies that were buying information from them. But Kate, there's something else you need to know. Collins paused, and Kate could hear him taking a deep breath. Janet told us that your case was special. MedIntel Analytics specifically requested information about young professionals with cancer diagnoses. They were building a database for a client who wanted to identify people like you for a specific purpose. What client? What purpose? We're still investigating that, but Janet believes the client was a pharmaceutical company that was recruiting patients for experimental treatments. They wanted to identify people who were desperate enough to agree to participate in risky clinical trials. The idea that her cancer diagnosis had been targeted for potential exploitation in dangerous medical experiments made Kate feel violated in a completely new way. She had thought the worst-case scenario was insurance discrimination, but this was far more frightening. Detective Collins, am I in any danger? Do these people know who I am specifically? We don't think you're in immediate physical danger, but we do think you should be aware that your medical information might still be circulating in places we haven't identified yet. We're working to track down all the buyers and recover as much stolen data as possible. Kate asked if this would affect her surgery or her treatment plan. Collins assured her that her medical care shouldn't be impacted, but he recommended that she be cautious about any unsolicited contact from medical researchers or pharmaceutical companies. If anyone approaches you about participating in research studies or experimental treatments, please contact me before agreeing to anything. There are legitimate research opportunities for cancer patients, but there are also people who might try to exploit your situation. After hanging up with Detective Collins, Kate felt overwhelmed. She had thought that arresting Janet Walsh would end her involvement in the investigation, but now she learned that the theft of her medical data had implications that were still being discovered. Kate decided to call Sarah for support. Sarah had been following the investigation closely and was shocked by the latest developments. Kate, this is insane. Not only did they steal your medical information, but they were planning to use it to exploit your cancer diagnosis for dangerous experiments. That's what Detective Collins thinks. He said they were specifically targeting young professionals with cancer, because they thought we'd be desperate enough to try experimental treatments. Sarah's cybersecurity background made her particularly concerned about the data recovery challenges. Once digital information is sold and copied multiple times, it's almost impossible to completely eliminate it. Your medical data could be floating around for years. This conversation made Kate realize that the consequences of the data theft might follow her for the rest of her life. Even after her cancer treatment was successful, she might always have to worry about who had access to her medical information and how they might use it against her. Kate's surgery on Monday morning went well. Dr. Martinez successfully removed the tumor, and the initial pathology results were encouraging. Kate would need follow-up treatment, but her prognosis was good. During her recovery, Kate tried to focus on her health rather than the ongoing investigation. However, she couldn't completely put the data theft out of her mind. The knowledge that her medical information was still circulating in unknown places made her feel vulnerable even in the hospital. On Wednesday, while Kate was still recovering from surgery, Detective Collins visited her in the hospital with more updates about the investigation. We've made significant progress in identifying the buyers of stolen medical data. Intel Analytics was just one of several companies that were purchasing information from Janet's network. Collins explained that the police had discovered a sophisticated marketplace for stolen medical data that operated like other black market networks. Different buyers had different interests and were willing to pay premium prices for specific types of information. Cancer patients were particularly valuable because multiple types of buyers were interested in that information. Insurance companies wanted to deny coverage. Pharmaceutical companies wanted to recruit for clinical trials. Employers wanted to avoid hiring people with expensive health conditions, and research firms wanted to study treatment patterns. The scope of the market was staggering. Collins estimated that thousands of cancer patients across the country had their information stolen and sold without their knowledge. We're working with federal authorities now because this network extends beyond Colorado. Janet's operation was apparently connected to similar networks in other states. Kate asked whether any of the buyers had been arrested. Collins said that several companies were under investigation, but building cases against them was more complex than arresting the people who had stolen the data. Many of these companies operate in legal gray areas. They claim to be conducting legitimate research or providing legal services, which makes it harder to prove criminal intent, but we're working with prosecutors to file charges wherever possible. Collins also told Kate that her cooperation with the investigation had been crucial in uncovering the broader network. Without your willingness to report the data breach and help us investigate, we never would have discovered how extensive this operation was. Kate felt proud that her actions had helped protect other patients, but she also felt frustrated that the consequences of the data theft were still unfolding. Detective, how long do you think this investigation will continue? Honestly, it could take years to fully understand the scope of the stolen data marketplace and prosecute everyone involved. Medical data theft is a relatively new type of crime, and the legal system is still figuring out how to handle it effectively. After Detective Collins left, Kate spent time thinking about what she had learned. She realized that her decision to investigate the theft of her medical data had led to uncovering a massive criminal enterprise that was affecting thousands of patients. Kate also realized that the investigation had changed her perspective on privacy and healthcare. She had always assumed that her medical information would be protected by healthcare providers, but now she understood that privacy required constant vigilance and active protection. Over the next few days, Kate began thinking about what she wanted to do with her experience. She had learned valuable lessons about medical data security and patient rights that could help other people protect themselves. Kate decided to start documenting her experience with the intention of sharing it with other patients and privacy advocates. She began writing a detailed account of how she had discovered the data theft, investigated it, and worked with law enforcement to expose the criminal network. Sarah encouraged Kate's writing project and suggested that her story could be valuable for cybersecurity professionals who were working to protect healthcare data. Most people in the cybersecurity industry focus on the technical aspects of data protection, Sarah said. Your story shows the human impact of data breaches and how patients can take action to protect themselves. Kate also began researching patient advocacy organizations that worked on medical privacy issues. She discovered that there were several groups that helped patients understand their rights and provided resources for people whose medical information had been compromised. One organization called Patient Privacy Alliance was particularly interested in Kate's story. The executive director, Maria Santos, contacted Kate after hearing about the case through law enforcement channels. Kate, what you've accomplished is remarkable, Maria said during their phone conversation. Most patients who experience medical data breaches never find out who was responsible or how their information was used. Your investigation has exposed a problem that affects thousands of people. Maria explained that Patient Privacy Alliance was working to change laws and regulations to better protect medical data and provide stronger penalties for violations. Healthcare data is becoming increasingly valuable, which means the incentives for stealing it are growing. We need patients like you who are willing to speak out about these violations and push for better protection. Kate agreed to work with Patient Privacy Alliance to share her story and advocate for stronger medical privacy laws. She realized that her experience could be used to help other patients understand their rights and take action when their privacy was violated. A week after her surgery, Kate received another call from Detective Collins with news that would change her understanding of the case once again. Kate, we've discovered something about MedIntel Analytics that I think you need to know. The company wasn't just buying stolen medical data, they were also working directly with healthcare facilities to identify potential research subjects. Collins explained that MedIntel Analytics had contracts with several medical facilities to help them recruit patients for clinical trials. However, instead of following ethical guidelines for research recruitment, they were using stolen data to identify vulnerable patients who could be manipulated into participating in risky experiments. We think Mountain View Medical Center might have been one of their partner facilities. Janet Walsh wasn't just stealing your data to sell to outside buyers. She might have been providing it to researchers who had direct access to you as a patient. This revelation was terrifying. Kate realized that people at her own medical facility might have been planning to exploit her cancer diagnosis for experimental research without her informed consent. Does that mean Dr. Martinez was involved? We don't think so. Dr. Martinez appears to be legitimate, and he's been cooperating fully with our investigation. But there might be other medical staff who were working with MedIntel Analytics to identify potential research subjects. Collins told Kate that the police were investigating whether any of the doctors or researchers at Mountain View Medical Center had inappropriate relationships with MedIntel Analytics or other companies that purchase stolen medical data. We're reviewing all the clinical trials and research studies that have been conducted at Mountain View over the past few years. If we find evidence that patients were recruited unethically, there could be additional criminal charges. Kate felt a mixture of anger and betrayal. She had already felt violated by the theft of her medical data, but the possibility that people at her own medical facility were planning to exploit her diagnosis was even worse. What should I do if anyone approaches me about participating in research? Contact me immediately before agreeing to anything. There are legitimate research opportunities that could benefit your treatment, but you need to make sure that any research you consider is ethical and properly regulated. Collins also recommended that Kate be cautious about sharing details of her medical treatment or diagnosis with anyone outside of her immediate healthcare team. Unfortunately, there might still be people out there who are interested in exploiting cancer patients for research or other purposes. Until we fully understand the scope of this network, you should be very careful about who you trust with medical information. Kate realized that the data theft investigation had revealed a much darker side of the healthcare industry than she had ever imagined. Not only were criminals stealing patient data for profit, but some healthcare providers might be complicit in exploiting vulnerable patients. Kate spent the rest of her recovery period researching ethical guidelines for medical research and patient rights. She wanted to understand how to protect herself from potential exploitation while still being open to legitimate treatment options. She also continued working on documenting her experience and developing it into a resource that could help other patients. Kate realized that many people didn't understand how valuable their medical data was or how it could be used against them. 2 weeks after her surgery, Kate was recovering well and preparing to start follow-up treatment. However,